That's a good thing. Oh my God. Yes. Okay. Here we go. Feeling good. It's always so many little screens. God, I'm done with boxes. It's official. I'm done with boxes. Good morning. This is the Art of Rock. Apparently, this is the Art of Rock. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the Tongva people as being the traditional landowners of where I sit, which is Los Angeles, California. Secondly, every Saturday morning we are here. Join us in Magic Art of Rockland. Best place to watch, I think, is the Twitch, but we're also streaming onto other places as well. This is made possible with Angelspit's Patreon. As little as $3 a month, you can back it. You actually get a copy of basically everything I do when I release it, including the new Ice Planet 9000 album. Woo! Or you can just sit on there for free, and because a lot of the content's free, because I think it's really important that people stay inspired and going and everything good and stuff. My use of English is bloody awesome, isn't it just? I have a gig on Wednesday. Oh my God, it's Wednesday and I'm nervous. This is going to be great. It's going to be live, freeform, long. It's not really freeform. Ambient music. Many of the three songs I am playing is coming off the new album called The Nebula Suite, which is kickstarting now. Butter, as in an hour ago. So there it is. And it's my birthday tomorrow. And if you want to buy me a present, just back that piece of shit. And I'd be very grateful. 2 hours worth of music. You'll love it, I promise. There's a whole bunch of other music that you will love. And I think we're up to like 20 hours worth of music. This is the Industrial Incisions playlist. It's old stuff and new stuff. A lot of the new stuff is from people who are on my Patreon. Go listen to it because you're going to find a band that you love, I promise. And more about finding bands that you love, I promise, is MTV TV, to whence we shall be streaming afterwards. Booyah. Always keep an eye. If you're not listening to anything, watch MTV TV. I promise you're going to find your favorite new band there. And hello, Diana. And if you've got a video, I need to make a video, please send it to MTV TV and they will play it. Everybody, it's so hard to find promotion. But MTV TV is free promotion that people are going to find out about you. They also have a Patreon. It's amazing. Please go back them. In fact, I'd rather you back them than back me because we've got to keep them going. It's very, very, very important. Also, Razi, who's my co-host, isn't here this weekend, but his music and visual stuff endures. Go enjoy Razi's stuff. He's bloody awesome. Welcome to the Art of Rock. Hello, everybody in the chats. Am I doing this right? So many computery things. Adam, welcome. It's good to see your purple hearts. I want to talk about drum programming. And this is kind of like just throwing it open because I watched the thing about drum programming and I went, wow, that's really interesting. I'm always reminded that I need to be pushing the boundaries a bit more as far as my drum programming. Ooh, drums indeed. So I'll throw the floor open. Do you guys want to throw in about, and you can talk about synthesizers, samplers, sounds. This can become a rant. Go.
I don't have a ton of stuff, but because I'm still kind of figuring a lot of stuff out. But I did recently see a video. I'm trying to remember who posted it. I know, I think it's Audio Please, the Bad Gear guy. He did a video about drum programming for amateurs very recently, like earlier this week. And then I think it's Pcant. They did a long one about drum programming. I'm trying to find that one. Um, and then uh, what is his name? I'll remember it later, but there's a guy, I think his name is Ray or something. He used to, I guess, teach music professionally. He still kind of does, but he has a YouTube channel where he just posts a bunch of free stuff, and he did a drum one very recently. Yeah, I guess I don't really let go. Just there are cool people on YouTube making drum tutorials. That's all I got.
What was your takeaway? What thing from these things stayed in your mind?
Um, I think what has stayed in my mind is that drum programming is a lot simpler than I try to make it out to be because yeah, I'm not great at it, but whenever I hear it, I'm usually thinking, wow, this is so complex. But when I see someone actually break it down, it's like, oh, it's actually just we did a four on the floor, we added a little spice to it, and then we changed up like the hi-hats or something. But like usually a lot of things stay the same and just a few small things change to keep it fresh and different. So yeah, you're probably overcomplicating it. That's what my takeaway is.
That's actually a very good takeaway. Hi, Alistair, welcome. That's one of my sins is overcomplicating drums. What so besides that, is there a certain drum pattern or a drum style or a drum beat that you heard and you liked?
Um, the funny thing is I really seem to gravitate towards like I think it's technically 80s like Motown style stuff. Like I found a lot like I think a long time ago, I don't remember where I got it. I found a bunch of someone broke down a bunch of them and I did them all in Ableton and like I usually go back start on those and then go from there.
That's
It's
great. That's really
I don't know
good.
how I ended up there.
No, that's great. I appreciate that, and I'll rant about that later. But first, Ivan, do you want to rant? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Drum programming is something I particularly suck at. You know, like I, I, very few variations in a song, or at least it feels like it. And I'm trying desperately to get that improved. Uh, there was a legendary Pink Dot song that I can't remember the name, but I recently heard it, and you could hear like there was the main beat, but then they would introduce like a separate beat to signal when things were going to change in the song. And like the importance of being able to use the drums as your signal method, so the rest of the band knows where they are and what they're doing. Like that song does a really good job of showing off like the mechanics of accomplishing that.
Keep going.
And being able to signal to the rest of the, like having some place where you're signaling to the rest of the band is important. And percussion is probably the number one place where that is done.
Also, from an arrangement perspective, being able to signal to the listener that something's about to change is also important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Bloody great. Okay, Alistair just put a really interesting thing in the thing about, now I've lost it. Alistair was talking about, oh, here we go. Fond memories of all the pre-programmed Latin beats on his grandma's Bontempi organ. I have fond memories of the beats on my grandma's. It was a Lowry. Now, here's a really interesting thing about those beats, and you've got to remember these beats are from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, is that a foxtrot was a beat, that the kick did a thing, the little clave did a thing, and the snare did a thing. And it didn't divert from that. It was the beat. Because the reason it was the beat is because there was a foxtrot and people would do the foxtrot. It was like the macchiata, but it was the foxtrot. It's same with the swing. Kicks are doing a thing. Clave is doing a thing. And then you go into the mamba and the samba and all that stuff. They're all doing their things. So the first really interesting point is that the rules of the beat have been around for each different beat, have been around for a long fucking time. And it's really interesting that I look at EBM and I go, oh, I hate these beats, they're crap. But Mark, as soon as you say a Motown beat, I know exactly what you're saying, or a Manchester beat, I know exactly what that is and what it does to your body. Because the kick drum is telling you what to do with your feet. And the other things are telling you what to do with your hips. And the hi-hats might be telling you what to do with your hands. So in order to provide the movement, there are drums to accompany. And what's really fascinating is that because there are rules and understanding, it really is a language. And we don't really understand that it's a language because the penny hasn't dropped on that one yet. when you start diverting from the language or overcomplicating the language, people go, I don't know what to do to this. And there's this ever amazing, and this is, I warn you, this is my opinion. For me, there's this ever ongoing battle of where can I experiment versus what rules do I have to follow? If anybody wants to jump in at that point, they're welcome to, because I feel like a rant.
Well, mic's up. Yeah, like you get the like the main meat of your beat, is this four on the floor, is this a samba, is a you know fill in the blank, and then like the place to play with or experiment with other things would be just below that. So it does kind of turn into a mixing thing.
And that's I'd love to get into mixing a bit later. So I'm naming this episode "Putting the Meat into Your Beat." That's fantastic, Ivan. Another fucking classic from Ivan. Thank you so much, Brett. Welcome. We're talking about beats
and apparently meats
and meats and beats. Yeah, this is so interesting. I hate four on the floor, hate it, but it's very effective. The reason I hate four on the floor is it's boring, and it takes up a lot of sonic space. Because when you got a kick drum going boom, 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 there's not really much that your bass can be doing to effectively work around there. However, if you do have a kick drum going boom, 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 that means that everything else can start going a bit crazy. And you don't have to have a snare that's going boom, cha, boom, cha. It can go boom, cha, cha, boom, cha, cha. And you can also be having a second kick in there that's adding accents and stuff like that. Oh boy, do I go on my rant. So, yeah, it's always fascinating watching a real drummer. And watching how they're having a communication. And when it's a really good drummer, like good drummers have a conversation with the bass, but really good drummers have a conversation with the bass and the vocalist. And the guitar just sits there looking pretty with their long hair. Because when you've got the vocalist saying things, James Brown, and the drummer's hitting it, which is why James would always say, hit me, and put the meat into my beat, or let me put my meat into your beat, or something. This shit just writes itself. Did some of that coffee just come out your nose, Brett? I'm sorry. It gets really interesting. And if you've got a problem with a beat and it's becoming monotonous, keep the top half and change the kick to a Manchester. Look up Manchesters, because it's like a dung 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 dung. Slow down. It's similar to that like rock funk beat that a lot of the Motown stuff used. But so if you've got everything going on top and it stays the same, but the kick drum changes from four on the floor to gung dung dung dung, from dung 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 ding 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 ding. It adds this fantastic groove. And if you throw that after a chorus or in the third verse or for an intro or something, it really makes that pounding kick pound even harder. I'm not going to say meat in that same sentence. Brad, I see your hand.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I like to mess with a lot of atypical sounds, things that don't fit nicely into chords and rhythms. So what I found is when I have a lot of that, a song that's really heavy and that kind of stuff, Four on the Floor seems to help bring the listener along with you. But there's two modifications that I'll make a lot of times. Instead of using four on the floor, I'll keep the four on the floor, but it'll just be two beats. So boom, rest, boom, rest, boom, rest. So it doesn't get too monotonous and it doesn't take up the entire space. The other one that I like, and I don't know what the name of it is, but it's a heartbeat. It's boom, 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 boom. And I found both of those, like in playing with bandmates and whatnot on the kit. You can readily use variations of 4 on the floor to both keep the song moving along and do the job as the drums, keeping that time, keeping everybody going, but you don't have to dominate the space.
Okay, can I ask you, with your heartbeat beat, is it going? Is the ba-boom? Is it the second? Is it just before the beat, then the beat? So it's ba-boom, ba-boom.
Yep.
That's interesting because you could do something crazy that you make it ba-boom, ba-boom,
That's
ba-boom,
right.
ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Isn't that interesting?
The reverse of that gives it a more tribal feel, and the heartbeat is just something that what it does is often it gives you either like a triplet or a 16th depending on the song structure that your brain sync into both the faster notes and the downbeat. If you reverse it, a lot of times it's a little bit more up front, and it sounds a little bit more like war drums. It has a higher energy to it, or it seems. Whereas the heartbeat, there's a lot of psychological variation you can do. If you speed that up, slow that down, a human will respond. They have no
It's as if
choice.
we're pre-programmed to recognize and respond to that rhythm.
That's right. That's right. And those are two variations I like of 4 on the floor. But yeah, agreed.
That's really interesting. Okay, so when you program drums, how much of it is real and how much of it is synthesizer land or drum machine land?
Oh, I would say 90% of it is a hybrid because I will readily, start a bass beat just, in the DAW, but then I'll come over to my pad you can't see on camera here with a pair of sticks and I'll sit there and I'll play to that and create a lot more variation. So that way I achieve my timing right up front and still have all the ability to add flair depending on how the song goes.
Okay, so what about hi-hats and percussion and all that stuff? How much of that's real? How much of that is programmed?
Almost every sound is programmed. The playing of it is real. And part of that is that it works better in recording. Drums and, like guitars, these are instruments that, a rock band only needs a guitar, a drum, and a bassist and a singer. And it's because those instruments fill up that sonic space. Whereas synthesizers, well, they can fill up the space, but they can also be sometimes very tinny or very heavy in one frequency. And so it really kind of depends. What I find, in other words, is that live drums, it takes a lot more work with the drum kit to clean it up and make it fit sonically in that space than it does to take electronics and do that. You have a lot more control right out of the gate.
Okay, this is fascinating. I heard, and I don't know how true this is, that I Feel Loved by Donna Summer, the kick drum is real. So that is a person playing the kick drum. I just asked Google and another AI, and it said no, it's a TR-77. It's not, because that's not a fucking TR-77 kick drum. That's a fucking beefy fucking kick drum. Secondly, and so if that is real, then one of the most important electronic songs ever has a real kick drum. And I know a lot of Deadmau5's stuff is not, the kick drum is not sequenced. It's not really hard quantized. If you look at it, it's off. And that's what gives it the groove.
Oh, yeah.
And also, flipping over to this whole hybrid thing, I think my favorite fucking hi-hat line ever is Red Rain, Peter Gabriel, where Stuart Copeland from the Police came in, played hi-hats over the top of a Lindrum.
Oh, that's cool.
And Lindrum was just going tack, tick, tack, tick, tack, and he was doing all this other stuff over the top of it. And it was great because that then goes into, you've always got to have a jar full of rice that you can use as a shaker. And yeah, doing that every single fucking track. Note to self. And also a clap track where you stand around the microphone and, yes! Oh my God, the energy you, and if you can get more people in there going woohoo, woohoo, yeah, ow, it becomes the most fantastic bloody thing. Yeah, it becomes great. Because that's the other trick about it, is that how do you put life into a drum track? Hence, let's go. What do you got?
Humanization. Literally playing it versus programming it. The reason drum tracks sound the way they do, you know, between rock and industrial, often is, you know, the difference between a human playing it, or at least some portion of it.
That's interesting. I will try and
I use a humanizer plugin.
And that comes to the fucking Brian Eno thing, which we'll swing around to. But I'm told that if you got a crash, you put it just before the beat, and the snares are just after the beat. And you've got to experiment with like different quantizing and stuff like that. So it's really good if you actually play it in there. And then you use a quantizer that's pushing it a percentage towards the desired beat. And if that desired beat is in fact a slightly swung groove, that's even better. Because you're going to feel the difference in the kick and also in the hi-hats. You'll bloody feel it. Fascinating stuff. I'm gonna just turn this crap off so I can see the chats. Adam says Reason has a groove computer that allows you to add randomization within the parameters you set. Diana says nice. I agree with Diana. Nice. Go ahead.
Another trick that I found is this is also something that drummers will do for groove, is not play notes that the audience is expecting.
Tell me more.
So let's say you're going boom, click, boom, chick, between bass and snare, and you got, you know, 8-note pattern going on the halves. Remove the third snare every now and then. Change that up. Once it becomes expecting, remove the first one, and, you know, then miss like the first and the third, or something like that. Take it a little bit more like the Jamaican style.
I love it.
But yeah, the whole idea is you interrupt the suspension of disbelief. That's
great. We were talking before about like pulling out, changing the kick drum from like a 4 on the floor to a fucking foxtrot or whatever. Another thing I love doing is putting the snare, moving that like a 2/4 snare, moving that first snare to the 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and or you could move the second one so it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 on 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and when you do stuff like that, it's really nice because those things start making the drums. It gives it an emotional kind of drive, because like, you know, they start, it feels like the drums are asking a different question, like when it's going it's going, but hold on, wait a minute, you know, it's making you, it feels like the drums are asking a question. Which reminds me of what track is that? Is it the Chemical Brothers? How does it feel like to wake up in the... That's my 9 o'clock in the morning voice. That's all I got. Somebody else, save me. Jump in quickly. How does it feel? There it is. Ivan or Brett or Mark, do you guys want to throw in on this magic thing? Chemical Brothers, yes, thank you.
I will say, like, you know, I've been working on one that's been kind of challenging, where it's I'm taking like cinematic hits and things that you know, these things are meant to be used in movies, and I mean, yeah, musical score in movies is different than, other genres, but, and trying to kind of fit that into our genre, uh, imagine like it's kind of a weird track mixed of like impacts, like things that sound like it's crashing into planets, and then digital dinosaurs.
I love it.
Yeah, and trying to figure out the beats on that has had me going for about a week and a half now.
That's great. So not only are you putting the meat into your beat, but you're putting the roar into your digital dinosaur.
There you go.
That was so bad, and I apologize to the Academy. That's really interesting as well, because like when you start now, okay, we're going to pull in some samples. Samples are great. A little bits of sound, because it's like you might have a rivet, and the rivet gun or whatever it is, it's got a sound that's dragging in just before the impact. So when you put that impact on the beat, it breathes into it. It goes,
Yep.
and it's stuff like that, and it's other stuff like you might have a spanner or a wrench dropping, or a water bottle dropping downstairs, or whatever it is that you're doing. There's beats in that. There's beats that are unexpected and really cool, and this is one thing I wanted to say before. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. Is that when you've got that 4 on the floor going on, when you if you pull that out and then you put in something weird, like you change the kick drum or you change the snare, it sort of holds everything back a little bit. But when you bring that kick in again, it just slams. And it can work in reverse as well.
That's right.
That when you've got like a Manchester beat or a different kick drum going on, your people are going to move differently to it. I have a story, actually. I'll be really quick. I was this is when I was in university in the early 90s, and there was a band who were very good, and they were Afro-Brazilian based. So they used a lot of African and Brazilian beats, and the drummer, bass player, they were so fucking good. They were really fucking good. Like these guys were students who were learning. Their major was bass and major was drums. And I remember I was mixing their band once, and I was watching that they were manipulating the crowd, and they were doing this stuff, and they would be using different beats to pull people up to get them up to a level, and then they would play that beat. And when they played that beat, and it was a big kind of big beat, sort of boom, jack, jack, boom, jack, boom. But they used all of this other stuff to bring them up there. And when they did that, and there was also a percussion player as well. And when they came in there, people were going fucking ape shit. And I remember the sound guy, who was the lecturer in audio technology, and I was working under him. He actually said to them, "Don't play that beat, because they're gonna go crazy." Because everybody had a beer or 5 in them. But it's just really incredible how beats can do that. Like, sure, beats can do that, but holy shit.
They have a psychological effect.
Yes.
A friend of mine, back in the 90s, he spent a couple of years like living in Haiti and studying, Haitian drumming, for voodoo reasons. Like specifically studying like the drumming plus magic.
The best reason is a voodoo reason. I want to hear more. Go.
Yeah, well, I mean, it helped him develop his whole like meat beat manifesto. Had to go there. But like at the same time, like he was really good, and he had a full drum kit of specialized drums for it, and like he was really good at all of the like, 'cause it's not easy. He spent a bunch of time down there studying. But like he could pull out like he could pull stuff out, and then like in that world, there's the main beat, and then there'll be a high pitched call that goes with it, and like the magic comes from that.
Okay, we need to talk about call and response, but before, Adam in the chat said, I have made a lifetime study of hoe beats, move bodies, hoe beats. And it's and then he goes how, but hoe beats, and it's really funny that it's hoe beat. I think was the typo that had to happen because Ivan keep going. This is where we get fascinating because we also like did a little bit of study into the whole African shamanism, the
Well, and like a high pitched polyrhythm that goes with the main rhythm, like can be super freaking effective. Like you see it all over the place, and it has this habit, if it's done well, of just working. Um, it's worth thinking about and finding the fun spots or
oh
finding the
yeah.
interesting spots. Like especially like okay, back in the early 2000s, new music got to be just four on the floor, game over, and bored me to tears. Like I reached a point where I was just like, well, I could go out tonight and listen to shitty music, or I could stay in and not do that. Um, Made it very easy to just keep working obscenely long hours at Midway.
Mm. Isn't it interesting how this brings in a really interesting, lovely topic of psychedelics and magic and all that stuff. Um, it's interesting how sometimes you want to get away from the monotony of the beat, the tyranny of the beat. Sometimes you want the tyranny of the beat. And I actually did a podcast this week for a healing, music in healing and music in meditation and stuff. And it was really interesting. Oh, like I engineered the podcast, I didn't do it, but I was listening to it. Fuck, this is fascinating stuff. And they were talking about repetitive beats. And, to me, it's like, it's find some really cool beat, plug it into a phaser and go.
And,
And
and and here's the fun part: guided meditations, like auditorially guided meditations. Um, it was throbbing gristle that really kind of made that into a thing. So like it comes
wow,
right back to our own world.
wow. Yeah, they were talking about like using transcendental like sounds and everything. And my whole week, I've just been really throwing myself into what is trippy, what is psychedelic music. And when you start I mean, look, fucking Mickey Hart, Grateful Dead. When you start talking about psychedelic music in drums, there becomes something really fucking powerful. Every time you and me get together, Ivan, it all goes witchy poo, and then Brett gets into it, and then fucking Mark's here, and it's oh my god. Anyway, so we can now let this horse run free, or let this. I won't say that. There's just so many things. Meat Beat Manifesto have that fucking A100, Cynthia A100, bastards.
Nice. Well, drums were one of the first instruments, man. Is supposed to have made that and some basic whistles, things like that. And so I think that goes back to there's something innately powerful about that instrument in and of itself. Of course, it's represented across a range of frequencies, clicks, but one of the most recognizable is just something like two logs clacking together. Your brain knows exactly what that is. And the other cool thing about it is it's one of those sounds that travels for miles.
We're human. First thing humans learned how to do was scream, like at a very young age. The second thing that humans learned how to do after that was hit things.
Fair point. Fair point. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it was a debate I had with a buddy a long time ago, actually, where he was trying to create music that removed all drums. And I'm like, you're gonna get bored of that so quick. And he was trying to do the rhythms just like using guitars and bass and have that carry, but it just sounded empty. You just kind of got lost in the technique of the non-rhythm instruments, I would say.
Fantastic. That's an interesting challenge. Is that what can you make a track? I mean, I'm sure you can. That doesn't have drums. That is still very rhythmically, and it goes beyond Tangerine Dream.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the first big trick is make a patch that takes the place of the drum while not being the drum. That's
And also, like, when does a modular sound stop being a drum and everything?
Start
I don't
being-
know. We are all drums.
I think it's about the attack.
All right.
I think, because in playing with modular synths and whatnot, the more attack you add to it, it's that shape, strike.
so make a track where all the instruments are pads.
Lullaby.
Yeah. Wouldn't it definitely? I don't know. You never know. This is interesting. This is very interesting. Okay, where are we going here? I was just researching about how Satan had pipes and tambourines carved into him or carved into them, which is really interesting. And I was looking at another one that suggested that they were adorned, as in given to, and other biblical translations suggested that they were actually carved into Satan's, Lucifer's actual being, as in my fingers are pipes or something. I don't know. But anyway, there you go. And that's only really interesting because it's from Ezekiel, which is a really old book. Doesn't Ezekiel also have the UFOs in it?
Yes.
So Ezekiel is about, well, that makes sense then, doesn't it? Oh, Brett, the way you said yes just then was really funny.
Well, what I was thinking at the same time is a lot of that stuff parallels other stupid stuff with like UFOs and whatnot. I don't know if you've ever seen like The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch.
Yes. Great documentary based on fact and truth. Go on.
Well, one of the neat things that they did, and is they had a native tribe come out, and they had them play, and they're monitoring this huge area with a thermal cam, and this one spot over there starts heating up for no freaking reason, and then it's when they stopped playing, everything cooled back down, and they repeated it multiple times, and so I don't know.
Wait, what was he playing?
They were actually just playing drums.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a native drum circle, and they were playing one of their songs, but the whole thing was done in drums and human voice.
It's very fascinating. So they were playing in one area, but another area was responding.
That's exactly right.
Okay, that's fantastic. If I may segue this into Jen, good to see you. Looking forward to coffee. There's some fantastic things going on in the chats right now. Okay, so this then gets into call and response, which is a really powerful thing to use in drums. So sometimes a call and response. In fact, let's go around the group and tell me your experience with call and response, how you like to do it, or go. Give me wisdom.
Call and response. Most often it's like for me it's like either a backward sound followed by an impact. Something that leads you. Boom. Something like that.
So in your situation, it's like a question and answer.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Or mockery. Something like
Okay, that's great. See, a really typical call and response is I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and everybody else goes 1, 2, 3, 4. But another call and response is I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and the response is 5, 6, 7, 8. And a call and response really is, it's this conversation. And it's a great conversation that, like, when you don't really have any ideas, synthesizer can call something, guitar can respond, or vocal can respond, or whatever. A really wonderful, that you can do that in your lyrics as well, where the entire verses are a call and the chorus is a response. The chorus verses is a question, the chorus is an answer. It's really good fun when you start in your drum programming. You might have one bar of a certain drum doing a call and the other one doing a response, and then that it goes back to the first drum, and the first drum now has a different question because of the response of the second one, and you start getting this curious, amazing, really, really interesting conversations going on. Yeah, where things happen, and doing that sort of thing is a really lovely way of coming up with ideas. When you start recording that, you're going to stumble across some brilliant ideas really quickly because you're using a wonderful part of your brain. Does anybody else want to jump in at this point and share call and response stories?
Yeah, so I mean, I use that a lot. Another thing you can do that helps call it out a little bit and play on that psychological whatever is put your call and response in different ears. So that way, you know, as the conversation's going on, you hear, "Hey, I have this to say." No, I have this to say, and it represents itself in 3D space at that point.
Isn't it interesting how, like, so much of this stuff, and Mark, you summed it up, like, at the head of this: stop overthinking. Just stop overthinking and do. And all of these things are wonderful things that you could put on a card and say, "Okay, I don't know what I'm doing right now." Pull out a card. Oh, call and response. What a great idea. And like, not like, you know, fucking Eno's cards where it's do nothing, wash the dishes. Uh, how about call the response or something? That actually give you ideas. But a real thing about it, and remember, is that as soon as your brain is locked into like a thinking mode, it's going to go off on its joyous way. But the important thing is that you actually do that. You actually start. Begin it now. Genius power. But you've got to begin it now. And that's the hard part. Does anybody else have, sorry, that was a rant. Does anybody else have stories of drums? Because when we could get into drum machines. Oh, could talk about drum machines. Mark, may I ask you, what's your favorite drum machine?
That's a good question. I would have said I think a 909 maybe about a year ago, but I accidentally discovered I think it's the is it the R50E or something? I'll have to look it up.
Is that the
But I
Kawhi?
found maybe
Go on.
because I found some samples of it and I was like, wow, this sounds amazing. Uh, R50E. That's not what I typed at all. Yeah, Kawhi R50E. That's it.
That's a fucking classic drum machine.
Amazingly heavy.
So, did you find out about that from Alex at Vulture Culture? Just out of interest.
No, I think I found some like zip file full of like classic drum samples and I listened to actually no, I think I had it for a while and then I think I was watching a video on industrial drums or something and someone called it out. I was like, "Oh, that's on my list." Wow, okay.
Yeah. It's funny that I found out about the chug of the R50. Oh, keep going. I'm sorry. I just totally walked in.
Oh,
Please.
no, I think that was all of it. Just I found it, it sounded amazing. I picked it up from a video about industrial drums. Uh yeah, that was it. Just it's heavy. It sounds huge. I think yeah, I think it was around the same time I was also messing around with learning how to do, I forget what it's called, but that I think it really popular in the I think 80s, early 90s with when you cut off the reverb suddenly. I think Bowie did it a lot.
Yeah, that's a gate. Oh,
Yes,
this is
yeah.
going to be a good conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, that was it.
And while you're there, just look closely at Ivan right now. Everybody look at Ivan. The face that Ivan's giving you. Oh, who's Mr. Innocent? Who's Mr. Innocent? That face, that's Ivan's. I'm looking at reverb right now. Face, do you see that? Oh, yes, it is. Don't you let him? You see
I have that sample pack
Oh,
from.
Alex's
Yes,
is
it's great.
great.
I love
It's
it.
really good. It's the
I,
diesel and
I
diode.
I use that along with the Cymatics DMX pack
Keep talking. I want to
because
put a
that
link
one
to that.
also sounds really classically good.
Um, Also, while I'm here, Adam Bomb, can you put a link to your loops, your drum loops, in the description? And I want to make a note of this. Keep talking. I want to find these Alex's loops. Go.
And then you know, like often I'm using does it DC snares and their kick as well to you know, like actually like synthesize those because like I don't generally like sample packs that much, so I don't tend to use them that often. But like these two sample packs, I definitely do use. And
Okay.
then
Well, I'm sorry. Go
uh,
ahead.
um, you know, I'll build like two Ableton drum racks, one with forwards and the other with like special effects and reverses, and quite often a third one with just like a you know the right timing for my gates because I'm going to very likely do some like gated audio somewhere along the line.
Brilliant. Okay. Thank you. There's a lot in there that I want to get to. Firstly, I want you all to have a look at Adam Bomb has got this loop. They're on Bandcamp, and these are great. These are like classic loops, and they've been fixed and cleaned up. And you throw them in. Oh, they're good. I've actually used them quite a bit. Thank you, Adam. They're bloody great. And another really good one. So this is Vulture Culture, which is Alex. This is his R100 drum machine. And these are just drum machines. I think there's a couple of loops in there. It's such a good fucking drum machine. It's interesting that originally Connor from Cyanotic put me onto this. And he goes, dude, do you know the R100? I went, yeah, kind of. And he goes, the kick and the snare are fucking dope. And I listened to it, and it's like, yeah, they are. Because my favorite drum machine ever is the Drumulator, SP12, the emulator SP12, because it's got that massive Depeche Mode sound. But this one sounds so fucking good. So grab those samples; they're great. Obviously, I also go to the Lindrum as well because it's so. And if ever I use this stuff, I put it on the Emacs because grungy samples on Emacs is good. There's a drum machine I want to talk about, but I don't want to talk about because I don't want to fucking say anything about that product. But
I think I know what you're talking about.
thank you. I will just say very quickly, the really interesting thing they've done with that drum machine is that normally when you change the pitch on, and this is what made my ears prick up, is that normally when you change the pitch on a drum machine, it goes through all of this anti-aliasing and bullshit. So it comes out being all nice and serene. But with an olden days Emacs sampler, to change the pitch, it would actually change the sample rate. So if you've got a 22K sample, an octave lower, it's actually 11K. Whereas on a modern one, it's still 22K. They're doing all this anti-aliasing filter. That's why the old stuff sounds better, because what they've done is a vintage crappy way of doing stuff, but it sounds fucking great. So this new drum machine does that. and I was very fucking impressed to see that, because that's what the Linn drum and the SP12s and all that shit did, is they would just drop the pitch. They would drop the pitch by dropping the sample rate. And that's why it's got that sound. But anyway, every time I get like OBXA, or I mean not OBXA, OBX, DMX, for God's sake, drum machine or any of that shit, I put it in the Emacs, because it's being played back kind of 12-ish, 8-ish bits at 12K, 11K, and it's got the same grit. Oh, it's good. So if I had to pick a favorite, and I do love the 909, I've got some 909 like modules from Hex Inverter. Fuck, they're good. I don't know. I'm gonna go with the SP12. I'm supposed to say Linn drum. I do like a Linn drum, though. Brett, what are your thoughts on this?
Man, I'm gonna go with a bit of nostalgia here. My first drum machine, my favorite drum machine still, is the Alesis SR16. You know what? It doesn't do a lot of the like. It doesn't do a lot of things, but what it does well, it does very well. And you want to. What they tried to do with that drum machine is bring expression into it, and so they've got crazy good samples for just about everything, depending on how hard you hit it, and you can sit there and do other tonalities and whatnot. And I'll even pair that with my DM5, and part of my drum kit back here is actually an electronic kit that I built myself, and it taps into the DM5 so that I can actually go acoustic and electronic at the same time.
I remember when the SR16 first came out. I remember I went to this guy in Brisbane who was showing off new keyboards, and he was showing off the EPS16 or the ASR10, I can't remember. I think it was the EPS16. And everybody was very fucking excited with the EPS16 Plus. EPS16 Plus. And he also demoed this drum machine, because what was the pre-runners to the HR16?
I think so.
Which is also a really, I'm just waiting for these guys to pick up in price. Ivan's eyes, ladies and gentlemen. That's Ivan's looking at. Yes, you are. But their prices.
I remember when the Alesis came out as well, because Craft Music had them on the showroom floor, and I remember just how easy it was to just walk up to that thing, not knowing a damn thing about it, and just program it, because it was that damn easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the it's really nice because it's this one is like I think I'm pretty sure it's 16-bit 24 16 is I thought it was 16-bit. So apparently it's 24-bit. The sounds are great. You can compress them beautifully. They EQ beautifully. And I remember the guy who EQ. There's apparently a kick drum on that which will blow speakers.
Yeah.
And he was going, if you use this kick drum, you've got to be really careful. But it's really funny how there's this whole area of drum machines that are really worthy of being vintage status. Because this thing's now fucking this is 30 years old. And it hasn't got to that coolness yet. Yeah.
The coolness of it is, I actually still have the SR16 I bought when I was in high school.
That's brilliant.
Still part of my studio.
That's brilliant, man. That's
they
fucking
felt
great.
like a tank, and they always did the job. I've not had any problems with like audio ports, nothing. It's just.
And you can go in there and change the pitch of the drums and everything, and.
Yep.
Dude, I had a Yamaha RX5.
Mm-hmm.
Got it in a thrift shop for like a ridiculously small amount of money. Great drum machine. Pain in the dick to program, like everything with Yamaha. They had no idea. Just didn't fucking think. And I also had a Korg. It was an awful piece of shit. It was some of their really cheap stuff. I fucking hated that thing. But my first drum machine was, he's mad. My first drum machine was a fucking DR220A, which I think was, it's the Boss. And Maz actually has the 110, which is analog. But this is, hello darling. we're talking about your drum machine. That is so this one's analog, tail end analog, and once again there it is. The world doesn't understand how good that fucking drum machine is. It's such a good drum machine, super easy, really good sounds. Don't sell it, and it's great. Yeah, but I've got the 220A, which was digital, and I think it was 16-bit. I'm not sure. Maybe 12-bit, but they were crap sounds and everything about them were crap, but I loved it. Distorted, lovely. Oh my God, it's such beautiful distortion. We're talking about drums, drum machines, and all things that go bang in the night, which in my case is also Frank, technically, when he's going, fuck you, wake up. Cats are great like that. Does anybody else want to throw in this at this point about drum machines, drum samples, or creating drums, or anything at all to do with
The most important part is, can it keep time?
I'll also say that most of the drum sounds that I'm using today come straight from the Kurzweil. A lot of times, what I do with my SR16 is I'll just put in a crazy beat on whatever drums, and I'll actually MIDI send it over to like my microchord just to see what it does, and then I'll try to jam to it.
That's lovely. So I just want to flip this over because, Mark, we started talking. Hear that? Hear that?
He's just gonna
Yeah.
trash things in the background.
Yeah. Well, he's on his. He's got his little feeding tower that I thought I'd get him because it would stop him from doing this. But he's got no. It's another thing I can fucking push around now. Such a bastard, but I love you. Come here. Come here. So we talked briefly about gating, and I would love to have a rant now about effects and drums and stuff because effects on drums are fantastic. Say something, Frank. That's very good. Does anyone want to have a chat, a blurb about gates?
I can talk about flange. Flange sounds really cool on drums.
Please.
If anyone likes 80s metal, Metal Church, the Badlands, the intro on that, I forget the drummer's name, but that was one of the first times I heard really good use of flange on drums. And that stuck in my head still.
Tell me, what does flange do crazy? Like, I know what a flanger is, but do you have to like watch out on when the resonant peak reaches or anything like that? Give me some tips for using flange. Do you have to compress stuff, multiband compress stuff, distort a little bit, add noise? What do you do, Brett? Go.
A little goes a long way, and it depends on the track. So a lot of times when I'll use flange on drums, I'll actually sample the bit of it that I want, meaning the peak hit here on the LFO, and then I'll just sample that audio so that I can sit there and chain it. And the way Metal Church did it, they did it with this crescendo, and it was the intro to the song. And so you just hear the drums start coming in, and it's kind of got the the flange effect, but it's also building in volume. And when they actually kick into the rest of the instruments, for example, that's when they killed the flange, and it actually did a great job in dramatic effect. So it depends on the track. One way I use it is sampling. Another way is let it be that machine I'm not controlling, and then it kind of gets kind of orbital. A little bit.
That's really awesome. I've never used flange on drums. And I know it's amazing. You know what? Damn it, I have to use flange on drum. I've used phaser on drums. But not flange. Obviously gate, obviously like another question is that, so do you hard compress a drum bus? Do you hard distort a drum bus? What do you do? I'm throwing the question's open now.
Yeah. Yes, it depends, but yes, for me anyway. Any effect is a go. Um, one of the fun things is taking a very simple beat, put bass snare, and run different time delays through it. Hit that with your flangers or your phasers. Now you can get stuff happening at slightly different pitches and different ears and everything else. So, and then of course you add compression, and it makes that effect much more pronounced. Kind of depends on what you're doing with the song, I think.
That's brilliant. Rezi, welcome. So we're talking about drums and effects. So when you do gated, and this is an open question to everyone, is it just snare? Do you do hats as well? Do you do the whole mix? Do you do the kick? Billy, don't you lose my number. What do you do? As we listen to Frank, you can hear him purr.
Can I throw in a slightly related question?
Yes, of course.
How many drum buses?
The correct number.
There you go. That was a good answer. Could you expand on the question just a little bit, please?
Yeah, I had a friend, I believe he was recommending that every drum sound would go on a different bus so you can
Do you mean
with-
track?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because when I've done drums, I just have the virtual instrument and just sort of, but then it's obviously very hard to tweak the different drum sounds. So I was thinking maybe I would do like 2 tracks of like a high and low frequencies, but what would you guys think?
This is brilliant. I love it. I see Rezi's hand up. Rezi, what do you think? Welcome, darling.
Thank you. I assume my audio's on and stuff.
Yes.
Okay, good. That's a start. Okay, so no more buses than you need, and certainly also no fewer is the answer, as Mark alluded to. You just actually posed an interesting way of balancing buses of low sounds and high sounds. And sure, that's a creative way. It's not standard, but you could do some really interesting stuff by doing non-standard things. The flexibility issue that your friend was probably mentioning is you group things into like performance aspects rather than like frequency aspects. So if you're going to be treating it like a rock kit, you might want to have the toms on a group or a bus. You might want to have overheads, room, and distortion, ambient mics on a bus group, so you can do them. And we're using the word bus and group interchangeably there. Different apps now have different ways of calling those things. But you also mentioned tracks, and Carl clarified. Each instrument definitely traditionally goes on a separate track, unless we're going back in time when tracks were scarce. They're not scarce. But if you're doing samples from a VST, they're already on separate virtual tracks because they're isolated recordings of individual drums. So you've got this hierarchy. Yeah, the snare drum, top mic, bottom mic, and crotch mic are all on one track maybe, but they're also grouped, so they're also a bus. So you can get really crazy and lose track of what you're actually trying to achieve, because some of the greatest drum recordings anyway have been done with maybe a mic kind of pointing at the kick and a mic kind of pointing like spotlight at the rest of the kit with a balance and bias toward the snare drum. But this is such traditional stuff that you can throw it all out the window and record, treat, and mix each individual drum with abandon and just do some, entirely non-standard, non-traditional things to them and come out with an amazing effect. That said, I would have individual mics on every instrument for certain, a group probably of the kit, a group of the ambient distant mics, and balance those and treat them and group them and do all the compression, EQ, limiting differently to those groups. And I could go on and on about this, but I suspect that the useful answer is use your ears and don't worry too much about how it's going. You'll know when there's something you want to achieve with balancing and glue and cohesion and distortion, having them on separate buses with separate treatments can be super useful. The idea is drums are too dynamic to really represent on the speakers in a mix. They're just the attack and the room are in reality are such different volumes that we're always compressing, we're always distorting, we're always taking some of that dynamic range down. And that's how I decide which things go into which groups. The distant mics don't have the huge dynamic range. The close mics don't have the low part of the dynamic range with the room. So some balance of those two things is a really useful way of approaching your groups and buses on them. That's, yeah, I may, like I said, I could go on for another couple hours about the minutia there, but things to say. Carl, are you back?
I'm back. Thank you
Okay.
so much, and thank
Go
you
for
for
it.
the minutia. Brett, spread some of that minutia on me.
So yes to what Razi said there, especially the last bits there, where use your ears, and if there's something you want to be able to tweak, of course it's going to need its own bus. My approach to it is actually a little bit more traditional, I guess. So the kit behind me, for example, every drum is mic. There's also an XY pair sitting right up here, so that I capture the overall sound of it. From that, it goes into the mixer as each sound, and what ultimately comes into the DAW is a stereo mix. What it gives me is that option along the way to tweak any drum I want on the kit. For things like program drums, it does depend on whether or not, it does depend on the instrument you're using. Not every instrument provides you this as an option. If I take the SR16, it's going to give me a stereo out. But like the Kurzweil, for example, I have a drum kit on here that I use one drum on, and every single track, when I actually come down to, or every single instrument that I use when I actually go to mix down, is recorded on its own track or bus or whatever you want to call it. My goal towards it in that regard is to give me the option to be able to take any sound I want out of the mix and apply anything I want to it, whether or not I've decided on it or not. So that necessarily dictates that these things are broken down to the microscopic level, if I can.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. And the first thing we're noticing here is that everybody's got a different approach. So I would be suggesting this. When you record, do you actually use that DR110? Because it doesn't have MIDI, and it has no form of syncing, does it? Do you actually use it? Mess.
Sorry, yeah. I haven't used it enough. Because does it have any?
No, it doesn't. It has
it does
no
not.
syncing.
No.
It has trigger out.
Yeah,
So
it's just and trigger out.
it will not listen to anything at all. There's mods you can get that will get it to trigger to external things, but fuck that shit.
I've seen people circuit bend them too.
So when you use it, I guess what you'd be doing is recording it, and that would be a mono track as well.
Yeah, and I feel like the approach would be more like a breakbeat kind of idea of
Yeah.
like having the drums that you sort of sample or like have that as a loop.
Yeah. Because the other thing you could be doing is, because the timing of it is really good. It's actually quite good. So if you have a 2-bar loop, you only play the kick drum, then record that, then you only play the snare, then only blah, 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 blah. Then you mix all that stuff accordingly. But I personally think the great thing about that drum machine, given its analog bestiality, wrong words, kids. Do you have a distortion pedal?
I don't have a proper distortion pedal.
Is there such a thing as a proper distortion pedal? In fact, saying no, I've got a distortion pedal and it's broken, even better.
Oh, true, yeah. No, I got to get my hands on a distortion, because right now I have this like multi-effects thing that I've been sort of-
Perfect. That's perfect. Have you ever run that drum machine through that multi-effects thing?
No, that is
Okay.
something I wanna
If you do that, it's going to be like dropping acid for the first time. You are going to go, oh my God. And then when you start using phasing and stuff Brett was talking about, you're going to get the coolest fucking shit because that drum machine is analog. The sounds, when you compress it, when you distort it, it's going to sound fucking beautiful.
Yeah, I did feel really good about when I put my keyboard through the distortion. It was because I just have these like toy Yamahas
Oh,
that set like way too dinky without any
yeah.
but put them through distortion, all that stuff. It's
Yeah, all that stuff is going to make it sound great fun. And what I would be doing is taking a stereo output of it, because a lot of the effects I'm going to assume is stereo. And don't just limit yourself to distortion either. Like if it's a chain, it might be a little bit of distortion to make it a bit warmer. Then you might drive it into a phaser or or whatever, and you might put a compressor at the beginning of it, whatever. Fuck around. Stereo recording. Then, in answer to your original question, definitely, I personally have every instrument of a drum goes onto its own track. Then the main drums get put into a bus and mixed. Well, everything gets mixed, but the main drums might get compressed and worked a little bit. The main kick drum goes into its own bus, and it goes in with the sub bass. So if there's a sub bass, it goes in there with the main kick. That sub bass gets compressed against the kick. So if those two guys are talking at the same time, the kick always gets priority, always. Then the main drum kit goes into a bus. Then if I have like weird samples or drum loops or something, they go into buses as well. Because I usually have like 4 or 5 drum loops going, because Adam's drum loops are so bloody amazing. And in case you missed it, here is Adam's drum loops. What do you mean a fucking error? I can't paste the damn things. I hate this. No, I can now. There's Adam's drum loops. And I'll use quite a few of them. They get bussed together, out they go. So all like-minded, all like kind of instruments are in the one bus. So if you want to affect them or turn them up and turn them down. And what you said about high stuff going into a bus and low stuff going into a bus, that's actually really smart. I hope this helps, because we've all given you a different answer and they've all been wonderful answers. Did you want to throw in anything else, or I see the hand of Brett?
Yeah, let's see what everyone has to say.
Brett, that looks like the hand of Saruman.
Because I can't throw horns. I had a suggestion for Mezzy there. A long time ago, when I had cheap keyboards and I wanted distortion, the best distortion that I was able to come up with was tape loss. And literally by recording from tape recorder to tape recorder through an air gap. Give yourself time at the beginning and end so that you, when you bring it into your modern tools, you can then say, this is noise. Otherwise, you get this, the noise pad goes through the roof. But the distortion that comes out of it is pretty dang sick, especially on strings.
I will say that, hold on, I'm muted. No, I'm not muted. It's very interesting. I was watching everybody's facial expression, and when everyone went tape, when you said tape, everyone went, yeah, tape. But when you said putting it through the air, everyone went, oh. Everyone got very excited. So that's a great. Raziel, what do you think about life?
Man, it's so hard to focus on one direction to talk about with this, but like, shortcut to distortion, think about what you're doing it for. First of all, making the drums sound larger than life and revealing the quiet parts of the drums. Most sampled drums already have a lot of that built in, so the head start's really taken. But distortion has the property of clipping off the loudest little bits of the stuff so that you end up turning it up, just like a compressor, just like a limiter. So you're revealing the ambience, the room, the air around the drums, and reducing the dynamics. And Brett has introduced a couple of good ways of doing it. You can certainly achieve that by turning the volume knob up all the way on the built-in speakers or the output and whatever you're plugged into. If it's going into the red, Might not be the kind of diode clipping that you were intending or saturated tube distortion, but you will get the effect, and it will take off some of those loudest parts and do potentially very interesting things without having to go get a distortion unit. And generally, if it's making really, really high harmonics, the fizziest sounds, you can just shelve that off with an EQ later and end up with a kind of a warm thinning that we were going for, even without, you know, a dedicated distortion unit. Turn it up, get distortion, slice off the top a little bit, make a peak. Go a long way toward doing some of those things without even having to get another unit. And then there's something more to the idea of the function of groups and buses. And Carl mentioned one thing about, Mez, what you were talking about initially about the lows and highs being separate. Groups and buses generally are a new volume knob for the whole thing. Like, you don't have the kick drum's raw sound going into your mix and the drum bus component of the kick drum going into it. You'll have none of the kick drum channels sound and all of the drum bus mix. Whereas things like sends, auxiliary sends and stuff, you will be taking a piece of that kick drum and sending that right to your left-right bus, your main mix, or the drum group. There's so many layers to it and levels that you really have to get your head around what you're trying to do. And I love the idea of feeding off a little bit of the bottom most parts of that kick drum or the kick and snare or the toms and sending those, not assigning them to a group so that they're no longer in the left right, but sending them to an auxiliary feed that you're now treating entirely differently. Maybe, like Carl said, along with the bass synthesizers, but that's now another element that is also going along with the group, along with the two buses of your drum kit and ambience. You've got like 3 components now hitting the master, where there's this new low end element that you're controlling separately with a different kind of distortion. And it's just like kind of intoxicating how many options you can do and getting your ears around and listening to that stuff. And any piece of software can do this stuff. Like, whatever you're mixing with, this is basic table stakes for it having a mixer built in. Send versus group versus the original channel that the thing is, making these balances, treating them differently, and then summing it together just at the main left, right, or at your drum group. Lots of stuff, lots of things you can do in there.
We are disappearing down a most wonderful rabbit hole. Brett, be my Tweedledum.
How about
I'm sorry, that could have been better.
VP instead?
Thank you, yes. Big difference between those guys.
I will tell you another distortion that I found accidentally when I was a kid that this reminded me of. It wasn't as versatile as tape loss distortion, but what I would guess I would call it is resonant body distortion. The concept is this. You have a bass player. Whenever you have a bass player and you're playing live, there are certain notes that are going to resonate with the drums on a drum kit. What is awesome is if you then take the recording from the drum instead of the bass. What you have is that energy piped into a resonant body. Then you have the mechanics of that resonant body distorting the sound for you. It can come into some problems because it necessarily means that it's very frequency heavy. It's going to be targeted into something resonating. But that also means that there's plenty of harmonics there to play with. And one of my favorite was to do that to my snare drums. And I would actually sit there and I'd get the general sound of what I wanted playing. And then I would tune my snare drum to that note. And so when it hit, the snare would sit there and start sizzling. And I would record that.
That's fantastic. Thank you. So, yeah, the upshot of this is that there's so many different ways to do this. And the core thing is that you should fuck around and find out what's good for you. And remember that the important thing is making mistakes. Because in the mistakes, there's going to be some brilliant lessons that you're not going to learn from some YouTube channel or something like that. Maybe you will. But you're not going to... Experimentation is absolutely critical to this play That's why they say play music. You got to play, muck around. Okay, so where are we at? What do you want to talk about?
See, the funny thing is that with all this talk about how to separate these drum sounds and modify these drum sounds, I just want to, my brain just keeps saying, what about we go against all of that and just have a sample of a drum sound and just do a breakbeat style, sample the shit out of it.
Perfect. Love it. Do it. Yeah, absolutely. And then you can do all the stuff we just talked about or not, or you can just have the one, because that was basically like there's 10 years of music that did that, and that was called the 90s. Actually, there's a lot more than 10 years, and there's a lot more than a lot more. And all of that music is totally relevant, and it's still considered classics. So yeah, that emotional response that you want isn't necessarily there because of the mix. And I could name you, all of us could name you a whole bunch of songs that are awful mixes, but they gut you. So yeah, fuck around. Absolutely. Get Aphex Twin or whomever. If it's okay, was there anything else you wanted to add? Because your questions are always spark such wonderful conversation. I think the Resonator wants to continue on this wonderful conversation. Resi, go.
The idea of treating the whole thing as one piece was definitely what was coming to mind with talking about just distorting the outputs. Like if this is a device that's got some sort of breakbeats in it, all of this work is already done. I mean, to get it into being a sample loop, all of the separate mics decisions, all of the busing and grouping decisions, they're already baked into the thing. So you do the opposite. You're talking about just playing it as a one-piece breakbeat, like a one-shot. But what I'm saying is now go into your software and slice that fucker up. So you've got just the kick drum. Maybe it's got a hi-hat on top of it because they're played at the same time. Then slice up the snare hit. Oh, that's got two open hi-hat and a tom, but that's okay. And now you've got, the whole thing sliced into 16th notes, and maybe some of them are just air. Some of them are just the reverb of the room. But you've got these 16th note slices that you can now separate into groups of functions. Like some of these are mostly kick drums, some of them are mostly snare drums, some of them are mostly hi-hat, and you can treat them anyway, even though that they're already pre-composited, as if they were individual instruments, and really start wasting time and getting creative because you were already happy with the breakbeat the way it was.
What kind of software or a VST would you use to slice it?
That could be done in absolutely any DAW. This is either a manual operation because you just look at the waveform and you say there's some low frequency content. Let me listen. Yes, that's the kick. Slice on the grid. Ableton Live, for example, would probably auto slice that just fine and turn it into MIDI for you and like have it replicated with its own samples in a single command. Most apps do that. But this is look at the waveform, see where the kick is, copy it onto the next track down. Look at the snare drum. Okay, put that on the next track up. This is just air, that goes on the third track up. This one's hi-hats, fourth track up, and then another kick drum, track down, that kind of thing. It's like you could do it for practice and like getting insight about looking at waveforms and recognizing stuff and the hands-on approach of doing it. Manual operation, something like Ableton Live, select the thing and say turn into MIDI or slice, and the waveform view will show it with the transients already selected. Pro Tools does it too. They all do it, but yeah, two approaches.
Yeah, absolutely. Or just get that fucker and cut it up.
Yep.
What you're saying, Resi, is actually something I do a lot of. I've got these fucking beats from the early 2000s, big stompy fucking beats, and I cut them up and I'll cut out the kick drum, put it on a dedicated kick drum track. Then the snare, in fact, fucking several Angelspit albums are powered by that. Happy birthday, Bad Seed 666. People who have birthdays mid-February are seen as the greatest human beings to have ever been blessed onto this planet. Yeah.
Is that a fact?
Yes, it is.
What about after the middle of February? Like toward the end?
Well, it's roughly the middle of February. Ashley Bads is also today.
Huh.
Yes. So it's the Aquarian genius that other lesser star signs don't understand. But just know that those great grand Aquarians are looking down at you, going, "Oh, they're so cute. Oh, look at them thinking. Oh, it's so cute when they think. Oh, look at them trying to evolve and trying to come up to our area of enlightenment. Oh, they're so cute." So just know that, those grand Aquarians are looking down from way on high, thinking very loving, encouraging thoughts. Does anybody else want to talk about drums?
As a Tauran, I see your China shop, sir.
Right. My China shop is smashed and covered in bullshit, honey. Right. That's great. Yeah, Maz, what you should do, don't you love it when I say what you should do, because you know something really dog shit's about to follow. Sample that fucking drum machine and share it. Throw it out, because that's such a good fucking drum machine. Yeah, just raw, and Brett's picked up his drumstick, so you know that it's like Harry Potter's wizard. Harry Potter's sticks, thank you, darling. There it is. Yeah, sample it. Great drum machine. Fucking great drum machine. Does it have a swing on it? Or is it just straight? I don't think it has a swing.
I don't see a swing.
I don't think it has a swing option.
Oh.
It's fucking awesome drum machine. Oh God.
I want to play around with that today.
Yes, I got your email, Rosie. Thank you so very much. Play around with it. It's such a good drum machine. Dude, my first few years were spent on one of those gorgeous creatures. Oh, well, it was the 220A, but they're so simple, so usable. Lovely. I might be off next week as well, but we're going to figure that out. But that doesn't matter. Okay, somebody hit me with something brilliant. Go.
I did have something else on my mind.
Shoot.
So I am moving soon, and a big thing on my mind, hopefully it's a good thing that I'm moving, and obviously a big thing on my mind is creating a music space in my new home. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there of like stuff that you guys would think of, or yes, do, don't do, make sure to have space for X, whatever. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh my God. Razzie, please, let's go.
How sensitive are you to noise and infiltration and coming out both directions?
I don't know. We haven't picked out the place yet, so we don't know for sure how.
That's a blessing. That's good, because you could make all of your decisions based on if you've got a place that, because sound control is impossible at any budget, any realistic budget, as we know. So you'll be making your whole decision based on, is there a spot in this thing that we're renting or buying or moving into that's kind of far away and separated by a few layers of air or thick walls or something that are already going to do a little bit of the work of isolating the sound. If you care, because I mean, it might not be that kind of space. If you're strictly using headphones and doing electronic stuff, it matters a lot less. If you're putting it on the speakers, it starts mattering a lot. If you've got open mics, it starts mattering a lot. If you're trying to do vocals and there's an airport, these are decisions. But that would be the first and biggest thing that comes to mind for me, is if you have a choice between a space that's got, that's adjacent to where the baby sleeps for the neighbors, don't pick it. Choose another space. If you've got some ability to put distance between you and the things that are sensitive to the noise or making the noises. But ability to, I wouldn't even consider noise control at this stage, but just picking a space that has some properties that are already good for that.
Sweet. Yeah.
Thank you, Rezzy. Brett, what do you think?
So yeah, pretty much the last three houses that that we were purchasing, moved on from, etc. All were, well, the first one had a custom built studio. It was also where all the, basically we ran, IP phones and whatnot throughout the house. And so the entire house would be mic'd at any given point in time. If you don't have that luxury, you kind of come to where I'm at now, where what I got from that environment is it became an environment where I had friends over and we all wanted to play music, we jam. So that became kind of a driving factor. If I ever want that, I need the physical space. And so the house that we bought, I've got now, it was purchased based on the fact that I know that a room this size will hold 5 people doing everything they do. And then, after that, it becomes about sound management in regards to sound management. So the drums represent one of those things that can punch through walls rather quickly. The bass as well, but the bass is easier to tame because it has a volume. So in that regard, one of the things that I did after buying this is literally play it, have Melissa walk around the house. How well can you hear it? Will it punch through the neighbor's walls? If I'm playing at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's information you need to know. And so whatever you would choose, I would say that, build it upon or buy it or build it or whatever you're going to do based on the requirements of the space you need for humans. If it's just you, then obviously it's less. And then do your testing based on what you can push through the walls to another human, essentially. And then that gives you your range and what you can comfortably get away with in your space.
Excellent. I should have asked you guys for some advice before I set up in here because this is bloody great. Mark, what are you thinking?
Mine is very simple, and it has nothing to do necessarily with the sound quality or any of that stuff. Decide if you're going to paint the room before you move into it. That is, thankfully, I don't think I had a ton of stuff in this room before I painted it, but I feel like painting it was the best thing I ever did. It just feels so, well, okay, I don't know if you have this problem, but every house has basically white walls by default, and that it's just boring. I have very unboring walls now. But yeah, that's it. Just decide to paint it and paint it before you move everything in, because when there's nothing in the room is the best time to paint. Trust me.
That's great advice. Thank you. I've got a funny painting of the room story, but I'll get to that in a minute. Ivan, what are your thoughts?
They also they do make a paint additive that reduces the sound. Like, I don't know if it comes out chonky or whatnot, but it may be worth, investigating. Also, power. Make sure the room's got enough of it and that you're on a separate circuit so that, like noise from it doesn't affect you in there. And, more importantly, you have it. Because, like, especially in rental places, like finding enough power can become a pain in the ass. So, one of those things to keep in mind. Also, like big ass windows in the studio room, probably not a wantable thing.
There's so many great advice here. Thank you. Yeah, be aware of the power situation because in the winter and summer, air conditioning and cooling devices are going to blow shit up quick. What I do when I moved into a new place is I measured everything. This is how anal I am. I actually measured everything. I agree, windows are not necessarily a good thing because where windows are, that's one less place you can stack your gear. If there's a window over there, that's great. Also remember windows equals glare. And you don't want a window facing west. Well, in LA,
They can mess with the sound floor of the room.
Yeah. And also west equals very hot in LA. Step one, I think myself anyway, measure the room. Step two, measure your gear. Step three, and this is so anal, I'm sorry, is actually make a 10-to-1 scale of where everything's going to move, and you make sure that shit can move around. If you've got gear where you have to get in behind it, make sure you can get in behind it.
Make scaled cutouts of your stuff and put them in the room.
That's what I do.
Color forms for moving.
Yeah. If you have a big rug, put the big rug down first, because A, it's going to suck up additional sound, and B, if you're on a rolling chair, you might start wearing out the wood pretty quick, because it does. And if you can paint the room, and pick a color that makes you feel ping alive. I always myself personally go with what's called Chicago red or Pantone 186, which is the Angelspit red. It's that slightly scarlet, slightly one knockoff fire engine red. Because it's zing, zing, zing for me. Might be something else. Mark's got a beautiful brown going on in the background. But if you can't paint
That's a gray.
it's a gray?
Yeah, I went with gray because it's not as dark as black, but also gray kind of goes with everything pretty well.
Right.
But yeah.
I would suggest don't paint the room black for reasons. And if you are stuck with a white room, remember that there are some really nice colored lights you can get. Like if you look around Brett's place, and you can, oh, look at that. He's changing the color of the lights. It's blue, red. Oh my God. That's also a fun thing to do, because these are fun things that are going to add to the vibe of your music making. And if the reality is that you're in a bedroom, because that's a lot of people's reality, you need to figure out how you can, for want of a better term, separate church and state. So if you can put a cloth over everything or cover everything or something, make a psychological wall. It could be a big sheet that you throw over everything. Last thing is, as far as like acoustic treatments, I can't and I don't, because I just couldn't be fucked. I just don't have, it's not in my bandwidth anymore. And I don't, I can do so much stuff with mixing, and I have good mastering people and blah, 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 blah. So it's not an issue. If you are going to be streaming from your room, that's something you need to figure out, is that what's the camera catching? And you might want to sit down first and go, well, if I can't paint the wall, I might put up some stencils because you can peel them off or whatever. Setting up lights behind stuff, then move the gear in. Plan it. It's fun to plan it, because moving things 5 times isn't fun once you realize that shit isn't going to work and isn't going to fit. And be aware where the electrical sockets are. And like Ivan said, know if they're all on the same. If you can figure out if they're on the same circuit, they probably will be. Rezi, what are your thoughts?
I think 3 things, at least 3 things. Ivan, the chunky paint, I used some. I got some additives stuff. That's only affecting the waveforms that are as deep as the paint. So really, really high frequencies are slightly affected by the texture of your walls. Mid to low frequencies are not affected at all. The low ones actually mostly pass through. But scattering the reflected high-end sounds, you can do some stuff with a combination of absorption and reflection. And textured paint is one of the things at the highest frequencies, which at, hey, maybe your youthful age, you can actually hear those things and it's useful. I'll just leave it at that. And non-parallel surfaces will do the rest of the work. You may need to put a dresser on an angle or a bookshelf with the staggered kind of surface that reflects. For some of the mid-range and lower end frequencies will actually be affected by those. But doing the acoustic design is probably way beyond the scope of just picking a room and getting in there and doing something. So I wouldn't worry about that as much. But measuring the room, Carl, you're talking about scale models and how to lay it out. Like, I definitely am with you on that. if you're going to follow through and do some stuff with testing with a, calibrated neutral omnidirectional mic that's made for that thing and where your speakers are, it's a whole pain in the ass, and it doesn't really help you that much at the end of the day. But I've definitely gone through the same kind of like hyper obsessive measurement stuff that Carl was alluding to, where I turned on the speakers, ran a frequency sweep, and stood at different places in the room and just marked with tape on the floor where the nulls are at 40 and 30 and 20, just so I know. Don't stand there if you're trying to assess the bass. Here's a spot where this frequency is actually represented well, and you can get around all of the designing a room to like really represent all the frequencies equally by just knowing where it fucks up. And it will fuck up at the proportions of a normal room size. The wavelengths are going to interact with their reflections in various ways. It's impossible to fight. Learn to live with it, mark it out, actually do your, not a scale model, but actually in the room, just listen to where there's a dead zone. If you're playing a sine wave at 40 hertz and you stand somewhere 5-10 feet back from your speakers, it's going to disappear entirely. It will be silent there. That's the place not to sit when you're mixing bass. Just an example. And then while you're doing the measurements and layout and conceptualizing, I think different people have different approaches to this, but I've done it every time so that I can walk behind all of the things. Like, it makes the cockpit a little bit smaller, but the ability to just walk behind the rack of stuff and where the computers are stored or your screens and where the keyboards are and just get at the plugs from that side. You're probably wearing a headlamp while you're doing this, in my imagination. I know I am. Makes life easier. It just, like, when you have to go and plug something, it brings you back to like as good as being on a tabletop where the layout started. You just reach behind it and plug it. But if you can walk around your rack of stuff and look in the back of it, and have room to still crouch down and look at what's going on in there, that's going to life save many times.
Yes. Thank you. Really great advice here. Also, make sure you've got a spot free for a 5-octave keyboard. Because if you end up getting a 5-octave keyboard or a 4-octave keyboard, which you probably may, make sure there's actual space for it. Space for growth. Oh my God, what's going on? Talk to me, humans. My messaging thing has crashed, and I think somebody sent me a message. I can't read it anymore. No, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what year it is. Okay, what's going on? What do we want to talk about? Go. We're nearly at the end of this. We're nearly at the end of this. Does anybody want to have a 10-minute question they want to throw in, or statement, or rant? Brett, I think I heard you go.
I was just saying, I think that about covered all the bases on the studio design topic, especially for the home user. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, good stuff. This is now on YouTube. I'm going to go through and timestamp this as usual because there's some really great stuff here. We could wrap this up if you want. Maybe we should do that. Thank you. This has been amazing. Excuse me. We're going to raid to MTV in a moment. But excuse me first. Every Saturday we're here. May not be next Saturday, but I'm going to let everyone know when I figure out what the hell's going on. This is made possible with Angelspit's Patreon. If you want to help me out, that would be amazing. If you don't want to, that's fine. Shit's free. I'm going to always make stuff as free as I can. There is a gig this Wednesday. This is the Ice Planet 9000 Auto Dealer gig number 2. We're talking about gig number 3. But please come along. It's going to be great. It's going to be really great. Ice Planet 9000's album is kickstarting right now. I launched it this morning. And remember, if you're a Patreon supporter, you're getting a free digital copy. Thank you. So have a look because there's more fun stuff. Everybody said, I want the box things again. So I'm going to make those smashed boxes again. The Industrial Incisions playlist is there. Whole bunch of bands that you need to know about. They're awesome. Wednesday nights, always keep it free for Vulture Culture's live stream, which I think's 9 p.m. or 6 p.m. or something. I don't know. Like Vulture Culture's channel, and always great words about synthesizers and such. And Razi, thank you so much for always being best co-host ever, and I'm very grateful.
It's always a pleasure. Thank you for saying so.
Thank you, and your brain is fantastic, and your knowledge is most wondrous. And we're going to MTV TV. So please, if you're not watching on Twitch, we're going to raid there now. Hey Diana, could you raid us? If you're watching anywhere else, there's the link. Click on that link, and we're going to go watch some MTV TV. That's really easy to say at fucking 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning. And if you do a stream, always stream over to MTV TV. We've got to keep them going. We've got to keep people in that direction. Let me know when that's rated. Of course, I could look because I'm watching Twitch as well. We're going to hang back here and have a chat. Thank you, Jen. See you for coffee in a bit. This coffee channel is for mature audience. What channel is for mature audiences? Everything is. Hey, we're going MTV TV. Rock and roll. Love and Distortion, kids.